Hey guys, welcome back to Community Starcraft 2. I'm your host Magnet, and today's lesson is regarding ZvT scouting. As we can see on the screen, some of the stuff I'm going to be talking about is not present in these replays, so I'm just going to be talking about what you need to look out for at what time, and the little tools that you can use to get more information, help you play better against what your opponent is doing, and of course, hopefully wind up countering that and beating that. So we will go ahead and proceed into the game, if you don't mind. I don't know why I would ask that, because you don't have any input. So here we are looking at Biol, and he is fighting the STC. I'm going to do this from Biol's perspective so that it's kind of more genuine in the way that's going to look in your own games as well. So we will go forward with that. So I'm just going to fast forward up to a point that actually matters. So to the point where we're starting to get scouting information. Now, of course, something that I've said every single time is you do want to send out your first Overlord to try and figure out what's going on. And in this matchup, you can send out your second one in a different direction, especially on a 4-player map to try and figure out what's going on. But if you want to be super safe against things like bunkers, you can put an Overlord over top of your own expansion. And Biol is actually going to do something that's really smart, and he's going to send out this drone up to the center of the map and try to figure out where his opponent is via drone scouting, because he really does not want to get proxied, and that's the first thing you want to worry about. So drone scouting is undeniably the most safe way to scout in the early game. Of course, it does pull off some economy, but if it prevents you from getting proxied and bunker rushed and killed that way, then it's totally worth it. So this is again one of those safety things that I always point back to. You can just take the risk and be accepting of the consequences if you want to go that way, but the safer and better thing to do in long term is just to get information. So if you send this drone out, you want to be sure that they are making a barracks, and if their base is empty, then it's obvious that they're proxying. You want to definitely get a faster pull out, maybe a faster gas, maybe even start a spine crawler. But either way, like we've talked about many times, you're going to go hatch first in this matchup basically every game. So Biol's just going to go hatch first, and this drone is going to try and figure out what's going on. Of course, we are watching from his perspective, so we don't know where the Terran has spawned yet. But he does see what's going on here. So he gets there and he sees a command center. So this is CC first. There's no proxy barracks or anything like that, so Biol can very safely do whatever he wants. And in this circumstance, an adjustment that you could make is if you see command center first, you could actually just take a third hatchery before you even need to drop your pool. So basically, the whole game here is that you open up hatch first. Then the next determination is what are you going to make next? The next thing you can make is a couple of drones if you know you're going to be safe. If you're being proxied, you definitely don't want to make these extra drones. You want to make your pool right away. But if that's the case, or rather if you see command center first, which is what we're seeing with the drone scout here, then you have the option of just taking a third hatch right away and being just fine about that. So we'll see what Biol opts to do, but that's definitely a possibility. You can see he's also trying to block where a barracks would normally go down right there. So Biol is going to send out a drone, and it looks like he is going to take that third hatch. And notice there's no pool because he doesn't need it yet. So these are the kind of adjustments you could make if you do get this kind of information in a timely manner, which is why I always recommend drone scouting. It's so valuable, and it can get you so far ahead in games just from sending one drone out. Assuming you know how to react properly, which is what this video is about. So the expansion is now up. The pool is now on the way. You do want to get a quicker gas, especially on 3 hatch before pool, because getting Zergling speed out to deal with any Hellions or any weird timings that might come up is really essential. So it's going to start mining gas right away. I was just going to say, you do want 3 in there. So on the Terran perspective, the next thing you want to find out is at about maybe 7 minutes, maybe a little bit after that, you want to send your Overlord in there and figure out what they're doing with their factory tech. Because this is the stage of the game where things like Banshees could start showing up. Again, it's at 7 minutes. It's not for a while, so I guess I'll just keep going. This is when things like Banshees could start coming out. This is when multiple factory Hellion builds could start coming out. This is when something weird like Marauder Hellbat could start coming up. So you want to be on top of all that information here. And of course, if they take a third command center, which is very common for this matchup, you can decide how you want to react to that. Most of the time, that would just be to take a third of your own right away. But the fact that Biol already has that doesn't really mean much if he sees that. So he's going to actually head in here at about 6 minutes and try to figure out what's going on. It's a little earlier than normal, but I think he's looking for an extra command center, considering the extra command center probably be put right next to the main. So he doesn't see an extra command center, and that could mean a lot for him. If there's no third, especially if you've taken your own, they could be starting to get really aggressive on 2 bases, and that's why you need to continually follow up with this Overlord to the point where you need to be willing to just throw it away, just for the information. So, gonna keep floating in here. There's a starport now. That's fairly early, and then the other thing you want to check up on whenever they're making a starport is what is this add-on? If this add-on is a tech lab and they're building it right next to the starport, then Banshee seems very obvious. So now he finally does see the 3 command centers, so it is going to be a little bit of a slower Banshee than normal. Of course, especially since he did open up command center first. The other big thing that we can see on the production tab is this armory. So this armory is going to mean a lot if you can see it. So Overlord, again, being sent so far in, it's going to die. It's okay if this dies, because you need the information more than anything else. So you see the armory, now you know things like Hellbats, or even mech are a possibility. So, honestly, at this point, if you ever see an armory, I would just throw it on a Roach Warren immediately, because if it's Hellbats, you need something to be able to deal with those, and the extra queens as well. So that's something you really need to watch out for. Now, of course, in this replay, this is so old, this was before the Hellbat patch was actually effective, so that's not actually going to be a thing in this game, but this is in the future. If you ever see an armory at this Overlord Scout timing, you absolutely need something to deal with Hellbats, because Zerglings are just not going to get it done. Maybe if you have an ultra-fast Spire, you can get it done, but even then, that's such a big risk that I would just throw it on the Roach Warren and produce extra queens, maybe like 6 queens, and the Roach Warren with enough roaches to put out just to deal with the Hellbats, so you don't take huge amounts of damage. So now we see what's going on here, and of course, to get you in Beol's mindset, seeing that armory is going to mean mech, so he's going to want to throw down the Roach Warren anyway. So it's not like this would be a different reaction. So anyway, it definitely is mech, as we can see on the production tab. 2 more factories. You did see the Banshee coming out here, or at least we saw the transitions possible. So you do need to put spores down to deal with those Banshees, and maybe even against armory like this, it wouldn't be a bad idea to put down extra spines if you find yourself having a hard time dealing with Hellbat drops and stuff like that. So maybe a spine and spore in each mineral line would be the absolute safest way to do this, but the spine or a spore at minimum is necessary, because you did see the tech lab coming down next to the starport. So Banshee is definitely a very real threat. After this, you do want to go back in and try to reaffirm what's going on, whether it's mech or bio or whatever, assuming you didn't know about these extra factories, which we do. But assuming you didn't know, you want to go back and follow up to see, okay, should I make a bathing nest and start expecting more bio, or should I make something different to deal with the mech that's going to be coming down? Say like an infestation pit to make swarm hosts. But the obvious thing here, something that a lot of people don't realize, is that if you see a floating barracks out here like this isn't just for fun. This is because that barracks isn't really necessary anymore, and that's going to indicate mech. It's kind of like how, if you ever watch TVP, which sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, but if in TVP the Terran will always float their factory out because they're not going to need to make any factory units. So this is basically saying I don't need any barracks units, and the only thing that really makes sense here is mech. So Beol really needs to start reacting here. His reactions are actually a tad slow, I have to say. The Roach Warren's just now barely starting, and it was pretty obvious for a little while that it was going to be some type of mech play. So, I mean, you can decide how you want to deal with mech, and there's a whole video on how to deal with different unit compositions in this matchup. And here's one good thing, is that if you can ever just get a really random run by, you can figure out what's going on. So now he knows for sure it's mech. If you didn't know for sure, I would want to have a second Overlord somewhere nearby, maybe even a little quicker high or lair, so that you can morph an Overseer and get in there to figure out what's going on. But now he knows it's mech, and now he should know his transitions. I would expect nothing else that once this lair is done is to start an infestation pit to start getting swarm hosts on the map, just to wear down that mech. The only other thing you could really do, or actually there's a couple of other things you could do. Roach Hydra is one option, but that can be really fragile. And another option is just a ton upon a ton of Mutalisks and maybe an extra base, like right now, once you can confirm mech, wouldn't be a bad idea. Somebody like Lenok was somebody that kind of pioneered that idea. But either way, we're kind of in the point where, okay, the Terran can't switch into too much more from here. I know what's going on. It's about 9 or 10 minutes. And if I can get this information, then I'll know how to play out the rest of this game. So this is the stage that you want to get to without taking too much damage, say from things like multiple factory Hellion play, say from things like Hellion or Hellbat drops or something like that. Banshees, which have been out on the map a little bit. I don't think they've done very much at all. Yeah, 1 worker kill. Actually, that was Beol that killed a worker, so he hasn't even lost anything yet. But so yeah, I guess the only thing to say here is that we're in the stage of the game where scouting is starting to become less and less necessary. And the other thing you really want to worry about is pushing your creep out so that you can see pushes coming way before they get there. So, I mean, we're basically at that phase. The only other thing you'll probably want to worry about is what type of mech is this? Most of the time it's going to be a lot of tanks, maybe a few Thors, some Vikings will usually get mixed in there, maybe a Raven or two. That's the standard mech, but if they do something really weird like Thor Hellbat, then you definitely do want to adjust for that. Probably a lot more Roaches or even Swarm Hosts would be really good against that, so you do want to start considering the different things that could happen from there. So let's just go ahead and jump into the second game so we can see a little bit different scouting reads here. And I have so many replays that it's actually easier for me to pull it up from here. So let me get to it really fast. You can see all the replays I've had to review, which is why I haven't had a video in quite a while. So ZvT Scouting 2 is what we're looking at. We're going to be looking at it from the perspective of Bly, and he's playing Happy. Happy is a very aggressive kind of multi-prong dropping Terran, so that could be kind of the emphasis behind Bly's scouting information. But I still do want to be sure that, or he still wants to be sure that there's nothing too weird going on. So what we're seeing here out of Bly, or rather, we want to focus on Bly, so let me turn that on for you. There we go. Hopefully not getting his clicks, because then this will just change like crazy. Get rid of the timer. So again, send out your first Overlord here, and this is a 2-player map, so you can just send it straight to this area to figure out what's going on. You can see if they have a command center or if they're going barracks or something like that. Then you can probably float in a little further to see if there's gas. Maybe that'll indicate Reaper or something like that. So first Overlord coming out here. The second one, like we're talking about, he's positioning it above his natural just to look out for proxies and stuff like that. But he can't play as off the cuff here because he didn't pull a drone. So I would say if you didn't drone scout, and if you don't know this well enough in time, I would just take your pool now rather than putting out the extra drones and taking that risk. And that's exactly what Bly is going to do. So plop, there goes the pool right there. That's right, plop. That's the sound it makes when it starts. Overlord coming up here. He is going to see the barracks. There's no Marines out on the map yet, so this has got to be Reaper. So Reapers are very standard in this matchup, and the way you want to combat that is take your gas fairly soon so you can get Zergling speed out and deal with the Reaper Hellion stuff that always comes up. But I mean, either way, you definitely do want to understand what's going on and how you're supposed to beat it. So you do need some Queens, you do need some Zerglings out here to deal with this. And the Reapers inherently should kill a little bit, whether that's a few Zerglings or a few drones or something. So don't get too stressed over them, you just need to mitigate damage from getting too far out of control. So the first Reaper comes up here, and again, Zerglings should be out in time if you took that pool timing. If this pool was a little later and he went a couple drones first, you'd have to micro away your drones and turn them into spores and annoying stuff like that. So that can get a little irritating, which is why I always recommend to take the pool right after your hatchery if you're not absolutely sure what's going on yet. So factory coming up here, this is really normal. This is going to turn into Reaper Hellion for a little while just to try and harass the Zerg just a tad. But assuming, okay, this is the next thing you need to do. This is kind of delving into another video that I'm going to make, but you do want to start pushing your creep out pretty fast so that you can get this third secured against a Reaper build. So it's really important to get extra Queens, which you can see them in production right now, and start pushing your creep out there. And secondarily, this Overlord needs to double check that, again, we're not dealing with some sort of multiple factory Hellion play. So something like three that's not even true. 3 Hellion at a time blue flame attacks would be really hard to deal with, and that you'll be able to find a second factory if you scout around with this Overlord. So you want to be able to rule out stuff like that, because that can just straight up kill you if you're getting a little lazy. So we're almost at that time where you want to start sending your Overlord in. About 6:30 or 7 minutes is when they start to make a real decision as far as which direction to go. But in this case, this Overlord is actually being rather fortunate because there's no Marines coming out trying to kill it, which is kind of normal on a Reaper expand. But you still do need to be willing to sacrifice an Overlord to figure out, are they meching, or are they going bio, or are they doing something weird like Banshee or multiple factory play, stuff like that. So just keep an eye on that for that timing. But still, you can see Bly starting to push his creep out like he's supposed to. He has extra queens. Even making another one wouldn't be a bad idea here. He's just going to go ahead and take a Roach Warren anyway, which is super safe. So, nothing too unusual right there. Overlord's still trying to figure out what's going on. And we're at that timing here. So we're at that timing. This Overlord did move over there and saw the extra barracks. So this is going to be bio play rather than mech from last game. And the only other thing you really need to make sure of is what's going to be supporting this bio. There's really two compositions that are viable right now at the highest levels, and that is either Marine Marauder and Mines being mixed in. So you want to keep an eye on this factory production to see if it's going to start churning out mines a little bit later, or see if he adds another factory and he's going to start supporting with Thors and Hellbats. So you can verify that by seeing an armory or a second factory along with bio production. That's really the only thing that makes sense. Tanks, I guess, are super rare. They'll come up every once in a while, but mines are more common nowadays just because they deal with mutalisks better. Now from here, all you need to be sure of is when are his pushes coming across the map and where are they coming from. So pushing your creep out is going to be a big deal. You can see being a little bit lazy on keeping those Hellions contained. The one laying over there, pinning the Hellion against the wall. But the Overlord's being put over near the third base area. Honestly, what I would do is once you get your lair going, which he's actually a little bit behind on. He should have either taken a third base or already started the lair by now. Being a little bit behind, but either way, once you get your lair done, I would start just pooping creep over these third expansion areas, so you'll have all day to realize when their third base is going down. And then once you realize that, you can kind of transition as appropriate. But either way, with these bio compositions, almost everybody who's anybody will go something like Mutalisk with speed banes and double upgrades on their Zerglings and Banelings, so 2 Evo, stuff like that. So I'm sure you've seen that many times if you've watched this channel, and you will continue to see that because that's the golden standard for this matchup. But we've kind of already passed into the point where there's not a whole lot more different that they can do that would require dramatically different reactions. So double Evo coming up here. Roach Warren was just for safety. He hasn't even made a single Roach yet, which I don't totally disagree with. The only thing I really have to complain about is just the fact that the creep is a little slow and this third base is a little slow. But either way, everything looks just fine. And this is the stage of the game where, he actually did make a few Roaches, nothing too crazy. But either way, this is the stage of the game where you're just going to go into a normal type of ZvT where you're holding off their pushes, maybe you're counterattacking with Zerglings and Mutalisks. Zergalisks, that should be a new unit. So yeah, we're basically past all the points of scouting that you'll need to know. The only other thing you might want to look out for are really super late Raven transitions or something like that. But even that should be fairly easy to scout if you have an Overseer and you're being active about it. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that video. I'll be back with more videos specifically versus Protoss scouting next. So look out for that, and I'll see you soon.